guys, how's it going? This morning we're going to be working over here on the west side. You can see it's kind of in the shade right now, and that's kind of my goal for this week. It's supposed to be 105 today, and then we have like 4 days in a row that are supposed to be 108. So we're chasing the shade. One corner that I need to start in is in the sun, but I figured I'd get that one done first and out of the way. We need to cut back some perennials, cut suckers out from underneath the serviceberry tree, general plant maintenance, really. Also, I busted out a new pair of Felco 2s for today. Oh my goodness. It was time. Time for a new pair. They feel so good. I'm also going to be using a hedge trimmer today on all of our perennial cutback because this makes quick work of things. So let's just pop over here. This is where we're going to start. So the end of this area is quite full. And oh my goodness, it was so gorgeous. I mean, it's still really nice, but when the salvia was in full bloom and the white wands veronica was in full bloom, it was just so pretty and full of color. We've got some boscabelle roses here, which I need to deadhead these. I need to work on these containers a little bit. So geraniums need to be deadheaded a little bit. They really need some attention. I'm also going to test the drip in these because you can see it's in the morning and these potato vines are already wilting, so that's not a good sign. And we've been struggling with the water in this container a little bit more than on the other side. So right here in this corner, this is where we need to do some thinning out, clearly. It's just so darn full, which is what I wanted. I wanted a block. You know, I planted all this stuff before we owned the pasture, which is now our garden, the south garden. The fence used to run right here. So I planted this corner with the intention of creating a block in this corner. There's a bird up there in the tree. Anyway, so, you know, it wouldn't have been quite as necessary at this point, but it is nice to separate and kind of create a little room in this area. So I've got a black cat pussy willow right here, which has been suffering from chlorosis. You can see the damage right there. Erin has been treating it though, so it is starting to look better, especially the new growth looks a little bit more green. I need to do a little pruning there. I've got a spring snow crabapple right here. It's a multi-trunk, which you can't even tell, so I need to clean it up so we can see a little bit more of what's going on there. Instant Karma elderberry, absolutely gorgeous and massive, which we've got a weeping Alaskan cedar behind it. I'm not going to touch that. I like how big it is. I think it's a really great shrub right there. The Autumn Brilliant Serviceberry. This is supposed to be one trunk in here, and there's just suckers all over the place. So I'm going to do a little cleanup here. This probably needs to be staked, honestly. I don't know. Maybe we'll work on that. We're going to cut back the veronica. We're going to cut back the daisies. This is the daisy May, which you can deadhead these like kind of individually and be a little bit more selective about where you cut them. You'll get blooms faster if you do it that way, but I'm just going to shear them back and start fresh because it's faster. What else? We've got the Pink Profusion Salvia, which I'll shear back as well. And then, you know, there's little stuff I can do in this area, cleaning up the ladies' mantle, deadheading roses. You know, we have a lot of first-year plants in here, which are kind of scorching because of the heat. I mean, we hardly can keep enough water to stuff right at this moment, but it looks like it's going to cool off next week. These look really good. Stand By Me Lavender Clematis are starting to really pick up and not look quite as mangy. They were kind of mangy when I first planted them. And then the Drops of Jupiter oregano. I've really been enjoying that plant. And so on and so forth down this way. Let's head over this direction. I think we just need to do some plant grooming over here. We have Surefire Rose begonias underneath each one of the maple trees, which has been awesome, you guys. This area has turned into a little bit of an odd area just because we have shade now where we used to not have shade, but more in some areas than in others. So when you've got 5 wells under maple trees and some are more exposed than others, but you want them all to match, to find something that can handle both shade and sun and kind of perform the same either way, that's a little bit tough. So we decided on the Surefire Rose begonias this year, and I'm so glad we did. They're so low maintenance. You don't have to spray them with anything. They can take sun or shade, and they're just pretty plants. So for example, you can see this well has a lot more shade than this one. This one right now, and for most of the morning, isn't full on sun. Look at that. They look great. Okay, on this side, see the fountains running, looking beautiful. We've just got, you know, some bleeding hearts that are kind of fizzling out, need to be cleaned up. That's typical of bleeding hearts. Hosta cleanup, not much. We need to deadhead these roses unless I want to leave the hips on them. These do create really pretty hips for fall arrangements. And by hips, I mean these, the little seed pods. They turn really beautiful orange. We've got some verbascum in bloom, you guys. I started these from seed. You can see I need to bait again for earwigs. Look at all of that damage down there. Gosh, dang it. Anyway, the blooms are gorgeous. These are perennial. So I'm hoping they just fill in this area, and they should even be a little bit taller once they're more established. Gorgeous colors though, aren't they? I'm going to deadhead this rose right here. There's a few little weeds. You can see what happens to our hostas when the heat comes. They kind of like eventually thin out because we're having to pull so many leaves that look like this. So you can see it's pretty pleasant at the moment right now. So I'm gonna try to kind of hurry through this area before it gets into more sun. And there is a tiny bit of a light breeze right now, which is so nice. So let's tackle the sunny area first, and then it'll be a treat when we get to the shade. Sunny corner is done, so let's take a look. You know, it's crazy to me how much we just cut out of this flower bed, but it still has a full appearance. I think that's where, you know, the bone structure plants are so important. You know, right here we have a triple trunk Royal Frost birch. There's a limelight hydrangea standard. Do you guys remember this one? We transplanted this one from, wasn't it against the side of the house? And it looked so sad, and I was really nervous for it because I didn't get very much of its root system, and it's just thriving. It's all budded up. This is its, what, second or third season in this spot, but it's really adapted. I'm really thankful for that. We've got some back and black sedum here. Yarrow, I typically don't mess with yarrow at all. In fact, I skipped it when I fertilized today as well as the sedum because I do not like fertile soil. I'm actually surprised they're doing okay in this location. This area, I swear the soil is different in this spot, but it holds on to more moisture than any other area in our entire garden, and it's been something we've had to adjust way down over the past several years, and that's why I'm surprised the yarrow and the sedum are doing so well. I was very what's the word, restrictive, I guess, when I was putting drip tubing down. I didn't put very much in the area that they're at, so I think that's helped. But yeah, I'm glad that they're doing it because they do look really pretty. We've got a blue kazoo spirea, which just kind of looks pretty and full. This came from the same location as the limelight. We've got an avalanche calamagratus, beautiful ornamental grass. This is one of the evergreens I thought I was going to lose. And honestly, I had to cut so much out of the bottom, I thought I was going to lose it. But it put on brand new candles this spring, brand new growth points. It's producing some cones. I'm just hopeful now that we know that it can't handle as much water and we've backed it off. I'm hoping that it rebounds and fills this space in. The Autumn Brilliant Serviceberry, you can see we cleaned up the bottom of that. I'm going to have to stake it back that way because it has taken on a bit of a lean. And I didn't even realize it because of how much sucker growth was under there. I couldn't really tell. That's the one pinpoint blue cypress that survived out of 3 that I put here, again due to too much water, just not realizing it. The crabapple looks a heck of a lot better. Look at that, just cleaning up the base so that you can actually see some structure in this flower bed is so helpful. I cut back the Midnight Masquerade penstemon, which I typically don't do, but these have gotten bigger than any other Midnight Masquerades I have on our property. I have a huge drift of them by our kitchen kind of entrance area, and I've had them there for, I don't know, 4 years or so, and they stay very compact. They stay upright without staking. These got enormous, like way bigger than I was expecting, and they flopped a bit. So I don't know, maybe it's a water thing over here too. But we've got beautiful Helen von Stein lamb's ear. It's my favorite lamb's ear of all the lamb's ears because I like the color of it. It's a little bit more on the blue side and the leaves are more bold. So it provides that beautiful bold texture. And then this is the Pennisetum we dug up from behind the Hartley. And we'll put it back here. Oh, I missed a penstemon. Got it. Anyway, I'm thankful we planted like 3 clumps in here and I planted 2 clumps over here. Only one of them half survived. So I'll be cutting that out, and then hopefully this one looks like it needs more water. But hopefully that one takes. I really like that one. And then I cut a little bit out of the pussy willow here just to kind of open up this space a little bit more. We'll probably work on it more. And you know, it's possible I might trim up this elderberry to look more tree form, kind of like the crabapple, and that will kind of free up the 9 bark that's in this space. But it's such a beautiful block that I almost might just leave it. Maybe we can move the 9 bark up a bit. Got the boscabels all deadheaded, and I fertilized the area. So I put an application of rose tone down. I had an open bag of rose tone and flower tone, so I'm just using them up. And because I had the boscabels in this area, I just decided to use rose tone on everything except for the sedum and the yarrow. Okay, now I'm just gonna zip down this sidewalk. I don't have a whole lot of maintenance to do in this area. I just want to clean a few little plants up, deadhead some roses, and then we will move over to the other side. Okay, I got the rest of this flower bed done. I thought we would walk through really quick. I've got to take a break to water the greenhouse because it's just about midday at this point, and then we will tackle the other flower bed on the other side of the lane. So let's just start on this end and work our way down. 2 Daisy May daisies that I cut back on this side, not as far back as I did the ones at the end. I think I mentioned before, but when you do cut your daisies back all the way, like I did with the ones on the end, they will flush back fresh. It will push their bloom season out like a few weeks. They won't bloom quite as soon as the ones up here, but since these are so close to the raised bed garden and there's not as many, I decided to just experiment with the 2 groups. And this area we just recently planted. I did come in and water because these poor sun patients were looking a little bit sad. I did a little grooming on the irises. I always expect to do a little grooming on newly planted stuff, especially stuff that I've planted in the heat. I cleaned up the bottom of the heucheras, which actually needed it when I planted them. Let's see, I staked up some dahlias. I had the stakes there, I just hadn't lashed them to the stakes yet. Did a little bit of a clean job on these iris, not a whole lot though. I did deadhead the lady's mantle. Same thing goes for these. If you wanted to shear them all the way back, which most of the time I do, I don't know, these look pretty good. By this time, I expected these to look a little bit more tired than they do. I just need to hose them off, they're a little dusty. And if they are really tired, just cut them all the way back. Again, it'll take them a little bit longer to fill in again, but they'll be completely fresh, which is kind of nice. Cleaned up some phlox. I did cut back the Midnight Masquerade penstemon, even though these weren't as big as the ones on the end, because they're newly planted. I wanted them to not focus energy so much on creating those seed pods that are at the end of their stalks. I want them to focus on root production, so I did cut those back. I cleaned up the juga here. The Stokes asters that we planted earlier, they're starting to bloom. It's so exciting. And they are gorgeous. Let's see if I can shade it. You can see the color really well. They're so pretty. This spot was really easy. Low maintenance. I cut back 3 of the phlox that shocked when I planted them. They should be okay. These 2 took to it a little bit better. More Stokes asters looking beautiful. Staked up the delphiniums, you guys. I'm really bad about staking things, but I took the time to do it today, both here and over there, and they look so much better. I need to come through with my blower and kind of clean up the sidewalk. Just groomed plants. There were some dead leaves at the bottom of the phlox. Again, all of this stuff, most of it's newly planted this year, so they always stress a little bit extra. I did deadhead the echinacea, which I typically don't do. Usually with echinacea, I just leave the spent flowers because the cones are so pretty. They're beautiful fall and winter interest. But again, since these are newly planted and these were poorly rooted in their containers, really poorly rooted, I want them to focus on root production, not trying to form seeds. Didn't have to do a dang thing to these plants. That's awesome. I deadheaded the Nepeta that we just planted, cleaned up the lady's mantle, and that leads us to the end. Okay, so now it's greenhouse watering time, and we've actually found that if we wait, not necessarily on the greenhouse, but like on the shrubs and perennials that we have, you know, kind of sitting around waiting for projects, if we wait till midday to water, because we swing so much in temperature, you know, like today we're 105, but we might be like high 60s, low 70s at night. It takes a good part of the day to get really, really super hot. So if we push our watering till about midday, oftentimes I don't have to rewater anything. There's a few things. There's a few baby plants that I have to go through every day and water twice. In the greenhouse, I have to check twice, but everything else, if we can just wait till that midday mark, it makes it a lot less work. So let's go get that done, and then we will take after this whole area, which is, I think, far less work. In fact, I saw Paul walking through and he had a big handful of hosta leaves. He must have been reading my mind, but he went through and cleaned up those big hostas already. So we don't have to do that. All right, greenhouse is watered, so let's get this section done. All done. So we'll start on this end and work our way forward. So I did clean up the hostas just a little bit, and then I cut back some of the bleeding hearts. That one didn't look too bad, but they typically fizzle out and go away to where you just don't even see that there's a plant there, and then they reemerge the next spring. I cleaned up underneath the lilac tree right here. There were some suckers I needed to cut out. All the astilbes I planted completely fried at one point, so we've had to kind of cut them back, and they should be okay. There's still life, and a lot of them are pushing brand new growth from the base, so we should be good there. Cleaned out some crispy hellebore blooms. Cleaned up the daylily. Now you guys, this is a Siloam peony display, and it is one of the most fragrant daylilies. Absolutely gorgeous, and just perfuming the air, just this one bloom. Sheared up the climbing rose right there. I really didn't do much in this area. There wasn't really anything to do. I could have deadheaded these roses, but I decided to leave the hips on these because they were so gorgeous last year. I'm just gonna let these be fall and winter interest and not worry about, like, these are the type that they will continue to bloom even if you don't deadhead them, but they would probably bloom a little bit more profusely if they weren't sending energy into forming these hips. But I'm gonna go ahead and forfeit a few blooms so that we can have that interest. The, what are these little lime punch hydrangeas are looking so good. Erin has been really diligent with chelated iron. You can see like some of them, this is what they do right here. They just are prone to that in our area. Most of them look pretty good, but he has been applying, I think he just applied some to this one not long ago. But overall looking great. There were a few random weeds in that area. I applied some of this bug and slug killer right here to the areas where I've got damage, which is around the verbascum and around the heuchera over here. But this right here is just like a little granulated thing that you shake over the area. And it lists earwigs, cutworms, sow bugs, pill bugs, crickets, ants, excluding fire ants, harvester ants, pharaoh's ants, and carpenter ants, slugs, and snails. The active is iron, phosphate, and spinosad. And that's my problem. I usually start seeing some damage and then I kind of forget about it. And I'm not as diligent as I should be until I see like severe damage, and then I start applying it. Better late than never. This is an Oh So Easy Paprika Rose, and I deadheaded it for the most part. There's a few little ones still left in there, but I kind of shaped it up. It was kind of growing over this boxwood here. Cleaned up the hosta. This is what happens. They just get kind of all misshapen throughout the season because we're so dry here typically that they just start looking like this. And this isn't even the worst of it today. So kind of sad. We had a glorious spring with them though. And then I cleaned up the lungwort right here. This is the Spot On lungwort. Bloomed beautifully. These were a transplant from underneath the crabapple up front last season, and they've just taken to the spot really well. And there were a few weeds in here, and that's it. So this area is done for now. And that is going to be it for today's projects. I still have a little bit of fertilizing to do. I didn't get around everything, but I usually like to do a mid-season application when I make it through flower beds to cut back perennials. It's a really good time just to have your fertilizer with you. Toss a little bit in there, and it just gives them a mid-season boost so that they can recharge and bloom really well later on in the season. It's also the time of year where you start seeing a ton of stress in terms of, well, heat, of course, any wind damage as well, and insect damage. You know, insect pressure right now is pretty huge in our garden. We're dealing with spider mites on like a lot of things, which I just showed you in a recent video. We found a bunch in front of the chicken coop. So anyway, we will link a video down below where we discuss spider mites and what we use to spray them, because you have to use several things 1 week apart from each other for 3 weeks in order to handle that. But typically that's our biggest nemesis, is the spider mites, and then just here and there baiting with the bug and slug killer. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.